the reluctant promotion. They promoted her without asking. No ceremony, no applause, just a data pad slid across the desk with new insignia attached. Cadet Rays became Instructor Rays overnight. She didn't feel taller or stronger, just heavier. Responsibility weighed more than armor ever could. Her new assignment was a hybrid combat unit. 30 cadets from 6 different species, each sent by their academies either as punishment or experiment. Half of them hated her before she even opened her mouth. The other half feared her, not because she was human, but because of the reports. Whispers about the Deathworld girl, whose sparring sessions had left senior instructors concussed and simulations rewritten. The first day, she stood before them with no speech prepared. Aliens expected ceremony, ritual greetings, acknowledgement of hierarchy. She gave them none. "Form up," she said simply. Her voice carried. Not loud, not commanding, but sharp in a way that cut through translation units. The cadets hesitated, exchanging uneasy looks. A massive reptilian recruit finally stepped forward, bearing fangs. "Why should we listen to you, human? You were one of us last week. You think a promotion changes what you are." Rays didn't blink. She dropped the datapad onto the floor. Between them, the insignia clinked against the deck. "It's just metal," she said. "I don't care about it. You don't have it either. But if you want to walk off this planet alive, you'll follow my voice. Because the galaxy won't wait for your rituals." Silence. Then, reluctantly, they formed ranks. Training began with movement. No weapons, no armor, no simulation pods. Just bodies on dirt under artificial sun. The reptilian sneered when she ordered them to crawl, roll, sprint, and climb. His kind prided themselves on strength, not agility. Within 10 minutes his muscles locked, and he collapsed, gasping. Raised and scolded. She crouched beside him. "You think strength is survival? Strength burns fast. What survives is what adapts. Get up." He spat dust, but he got up. Every day blurred into the same rhythm. Break them down, then rebuild. She stripped them of pride, routine, and the illusion of safety. No prearranged drills, no predictable formations. One day they fought in mud, the next in freezing mist with strobe lights cutting vision to fragments. Sleep was rationed. Meals were delayed. Every variable shifted except one: her voice. Always calm, always measured. Some cadets cracked. The insectoids, bred for swarm coordination, struggled when isolated. She forced them to train alone, no pheromone signals to guide them. Their limbs shook with confusion until they began to move by instinct rather than hive memory. Others rebelled outright. A feline warrior challenged her to open combat after a night march. He was twice her mass, claws sharp enough to carve steel plating. The cadets gathered, whispering. He lunged. She didn't move. She let him commit fully, claws descending. Then she pivoted, redirected his momentum, and slammed him into the ground with his own weight. The impact cracked stone. She placed a knee on his throat, not choking, just pressing enough to silence him. "Do you understand now?" she asked quietly. He nodded. No one else challenged her. The academy instructors hated her methods. Reports flooded up the chain. Unorthodox. Psychologically damaging. Not scalable to wider forces. Yet the performance data betrayed them. Cadets trained under her showed 47% higher survival rates in live-fire simulations, even against veteran squads. Their reflexes outpaced automation. They didn't just follow orders, they anticipated chaos. The council convened a private review. She wasn't invited, but she didn't need to be. The outcome was obvious when her cadets returned the next day with new recruits trailing them. Transfer requests were piling up, not from failures, but from top performers. Everyone wanted to learn the Deathworlder method. It wasn't a method. It was instinct carved by a hostile planet where hesitation meant death. But she couldn't explain that aliens raised on fertile worlds and sheltered academies. She could only show them. By the 3rd month, the unit moved like predators. No wasted gestures, no waiting for commands. A broken formation wasn't weakness. It was camouflage, bait for overconfident enemies. They looked sloppy on recordings, until you slowed the footage. Then you saw the precision. The way a stumble became a trap, a feint became an ambush. One evening, while cadets collapsed in exhaustion, an alien instructor entered the training ground, broad-shouldered, armored, with ceremonial scars across his scaled skin. His eyes glowed with contempt. "You shame the academy," he snarled. "This is not training. This is barbarism." Reyes met his gaze. "Then fight me. Show them your way is better." He laughed, removing his gauntlets. A challenge? From a child? The cadets stirred, some fearful, some eager. They knew the story, how another instructor had once struck her in class and paid the price. But this was no spar. This was sanctioned humiliation. The alien lunged with precision strikes, claws aimed to maim but not kill. Reyes absorbed the rhythm, every movement telegraphed by arrogance. She slipped past his guard, a blur of human muscle memory, and delivered one strike. Open palm, short range under his jaw. The crack echoed like thunder. The instructor staggered back, clutching his face. Blood seeped between his claws. His jaw hung loose, fractured. He collapsed without another word. The cadets stared. None cheered, none whispered. Only silence spread. Reyes didn't gloat. She simply said, "You can follow his way, or mine. Choose." No one moved against her after that, but whispers reached higher still. Admirals debated in private chambers whether this human was asset or threat. Generals called her influence contagious. Some wanted her methods replicated across fleets. Others wanted her silence before she shattered centuries of doctrine. Reyes knew none of this. She only knew the weight of her cadets' eyes on her every word, every step. She had become more than instructor. She was proof that survival was not a theory, not a tradition. It was human, and proof had enemies. Sabotage. The reports could no longer be ignored. Every academy across the sector had received them. Performance simulations where cadets outmaneuvered elite strike teams. Survival drills where casualty counts dropped to near zero. Mixed species squads showing cohesion thought impossible. On paper, it was undeniable. In practice, it was dangerous. Because the methods didn't belong to the council. They belonged to a human. Behind closed doors, alien officers muttered about infection. Doctrine rot. One admiral called it the idea that centuries of carefully built strategy could be undone by one Deathworlder's instincts enraged them. Some feared it more than enemy fleets. So they devised a solution. The invitation came disguised as honor, an inter-academy exhibition. Her cadets would demonstrate their progress against rival units. Public, recorded, streamed across the networks. The council described it as sharing methods. In reality, it was a trap. The units selected to face hers were not ordinary cadets. They were hand-picked veterans disguised as trainees, each drilled to perfection under traditional doctrine. The expectation was simple. Reyes' barbaric chaos would collapse under coordinated precision. Her reputation would shatter on its own stage. She accepted without hesitation. The arena was a sprawling combat dome, terrain shifting between desert dunes and ruined urban structures. Thousands filled the observation galleries, instructors and politicians waiting for confirmation that their old ways remained supreme. Reyes stood with her unit at the starting line. She didn't give them speeches, didn't warn them about what waited. She only said, "Remember, survival isn't clean. Don't give them what they expect." The signals sounded. The opposing unit advanced in flawless formation, shields interlocked, weapons synced. Every movement mirrored textbook perfection. Commentators praised the discipline. Reyes' cadets looked sloppy in comparison, scattered, uneven, darting into cover at odd angles. Observers scoffed. They're breaking formation already. But the veterans didn't see the trap until it was too late. One stumbled into what looked like an exposed human, only to be flanked by two insectoids emerging from rubble. Another charged at a retreating reptilian, only to find himself funneled into a kill zone. What looked like panic was pattern. What looked like retreat was bait. Within minutes, the elite squad fractured, discipline unraveling as they tried to adapt. Reyes' cadets didn't just fight, they flowed. They absorbed chaos like breath. When the match ended, the scoreboard was brutal. Ray's unit stood with minimal injuries. The veterans lay scattered, killed multiple times over. Silence fell over the gallery. Then whispers. Then outrage. The council didn't cheer. They convened again. This time, the language turned sharper. Her cadets' victory wasn't seen as proof of strength. It was insult, humiliation broadcast across academies. Rival commanders demanded answers. How could centuries of discipline fall to a method no one could replicate? They couldn't admit the truth. Survival wasn't something you taught with manuals. It was lived, burned into reflex by hostile skies and predators waiting in every shadow. It was human, so instead they called it fraud. Accusations swarmed. Claims that the match had been rigged, that her cadets had been given unfair intelligence, that her methods exploited loopholes. An inquiry was launched, and while the council debated, shadows moved in quieter halls. One night, training grounds went dark mid-drill. Life support fields failed, oxygen dropping, gravity flux surging. Cadets gasped, collapsing. Rays moved to the panic like a blade through water, forcing her unit into survival mode. She taught them to slow breath, conserve energy, use environment. They endured the sabotage longer than systems officers expected. Long enough that rescue crews arrived and found them alive, bruised but unbroken. The investigation called it mechanical error, but everyone in her unit knew better. Someone wanted them broken. And still, transfer requests multiplied. Cadets from across academies, even sons and daughters of high-ranking families, began petitioning to join her. Some were denied outright. Others disappeared before their papers reached her desk. The pressure built. Commanders muttered of containment. Politicians whispered of exile. She was becoming something no institution could control. An idea. An idea survived longer than flesh. The breaking point came during a joint maneuver in orbit. Her cadets were ordered to integrate with a fleet exercise. The scenario was scripted. Enemy drones programmed to overwhelm careless units, testing defensive cohesion. But something changed in the coding. The drones didn't stop at safe thresholds. They pushed harder, targeting weaknesses with lethal precision. What should have been simulation became battlefield. Alien cadets panicked. Their formations collapsed under real danger. But Ray's unit didn't hesitate. They adapted, splitting, regrouping, using chaos against the swarm. She barked no orders. She didn't need to. Her cadets moved on instinct honed by her months of brutal training. The swarm fell, piece by piece, until silence returned to orbit. In the aftermath, officials called it a software malfunction. But the evidence was clear. Someone had turned the test into assassination. And once again, it failed. Now, even the skeptics couldn't ignore her. A human had beaten their doctrine in public, survived sabotage, and exposed weakness in fleets meant to protect entire sectors. For the first time, admirals looked at her not as curiosity, but as threat. And somewhere deep in the council chambers, a decision hardened. If she couldn't be discredited, she would have to be removed. The real battlefield. The council's plan shifted from sabotage to silence. Quiet exile, a transfer to some distant post where influence could fade. But before the papers finalized, war found them first. It started as a border skirmish. A pirate fleet, nothing unusual. Raiders testing supply lines, harassing convoys. Normally, the Navy crushed them in hours. This time, the enemy didn't run. They lingered, pressing harder, forcing the council to commit more ships. When scouts finally tracked their movement, the truth emerged. Not pirates, but mercenaries armed with military-grade weapons. Someone had hired them. The Academy's orbital station became a target. Evacuation alarms shrieked in the night. Cadets stumbled from bunks into firelit corridors. Explosions rattled bulkheads. Instructors herded trainees toward shuttles, insisting it was only precaution. But Rays didn't believe it. She felt the rhythm. Too sharp, too direct. This wasn't harassment. This was extermination. Her unit didn't wait for orders. They followed her into the smoke. Corridors turned war zones. Mercenary boarders poured through breached airlocks, armor bristling with weapons banned by council law. Alien cadets panicked, scattering. Instructors shouted for retreat, but Ray's unit flowed like water through chaos, dragging survivors into cover, turning ambush into counter-ambush. One mercenary squad stormed the barracks, expecting helpless trainees. They found death instead. A reptilian cadet slammed bulkhead doors shut behind them, sealing the intruders in darkness. In that silence, shadows moved. Human-trained cadets struck from every angle, knives, claws, improvised weapons. When the doors reopened, not one mercenary stood breathing. Word spread fast across the station. Ray's unit is holding. Cadets who had mocked her scrambled to follow. Instructors who once filed complaints now barked orders patterned after hers. Survival instinct was contagious, but survival demanded movement. Holding ground meant dying when hull integrity failed. Rays led them deeper, toward hangar bays, every corridor echoing with gunfire and screams. She never barked orders. She didn't need to. Her cadets knew her rhythm. Sharp glance, raised hand, sudden pivot. They moved before she spoke. At the hangar, reality hit. Shuttles burned, wings torn, engines slagged. No evacuation. The mercenaries hadn't come to raid. They'd come to cleanse. The station groaned under bombardment. Hull cracks bled atmosphere into space. Rays turned to her cadets. "This is no longer survival training," she said. "This is war." They didn't flinch. The mercenaries advanced with precision, squads moving in hardened formations. Traditional cadets tried to match them and were cut down. Ray's unit did the opposite. They broke formation, scattered, bled chaos into enemy lines. Mercenaries stumbled into ambushes they couldn't predict, found their comms jammed by cadets who'd learned to use static as weapon. Every kill was brutal, personal. Cadets fought not as soldiers, but as survivors. Improvised blades, claws, even broken piping turned lethal. The battlefield became nightmare, mercenary squads unraveling under relentless unpredictability. But numbers pressed. For every mercenary that fell, more breached the station. It became clear this wasn't winnable, not conventionally. So Rays made a choice. She ordered her unit not toward escape, but deeper into the reactor core. A suicide move, according to doctrine, but survival wasn't doctrine. They rigged charges along coolant conduits, forcing mercenary squads to hesitate. They rerouted emergency systems to flood corridors with freezing gas, buying seconds with every burst. And when mercenaries finally cornered them at the reactor chamber, Rays played her final card. She cut life support to the sector. Gravity flickered. Air thinned. The mercenaries' precision collapsed under panic. Suits hissed, comms broke. But her cadets had trained for this. Starvation drills, suffocation drills. Every nightmare turned practice. They slowed breath, tightened seals, adapted. The fight turned savage. Silent, breathless. Survival stripped to its core. Rays struck like shadow, her cadets flowing around her, until the last mercenary floated lifeless in weightless dark. When emergency crews finally breached the reactor sector, what they found burned into memory. Cadets, alive, gasping, scarred, standing amid a chamber of corpses. A single human girl at the center, eyes calm as void. Reports spread faster than any council could censor. Entire fleets whispered now. A Deathworld cadet had turned sabotage into survival, survival into victory, and the council realized their mistake. She wasn't just training survivors anymore. She was training predators. Predators who had tasted real war. From instructor to legend, the aftermath of the station battle spread like wildfire. Not official reports. The council buried those under layers of redaction. What spread were testimonies. Survivors whispered it in mess halls, dockyards, and barracks. Ray's unit held. When everyone else broke, they survived. Within weeks, entire sectors buzzed with her name. The Deathworld girl. The survivor's instructor. The one who beat mercenaries with cadets. The council tried to silence it. They branded her methods reckless, her results statistical anomalies. They reassigned her cadets to distant fleets, hoping to scatter her influence. It didn't work. Wherever those cadets went, performance shifted. Mixed units suddenly reacted faster under stress. Entire squads refused to break formation when ambushed, instead turning chaos into opportunity. Admirals noticed. Veterans muttered about the Deathworld discipline. It was no longer a single girl. It was a contagion. The council panicked. They convened behind sealed doors, debating her fate. Some demanded exile. Others insisted she be elevated under council control. But while they argued, fleets prepared for war. The mercenary attack had not been isolated. It was opening strike of a larger campaign. Border worlds burned. Convoys vanished. For the first time in centuries, the coalition faced an enemy who didn't respect their formations, who thrived in chaos. The fleets needed someone who understood chaos. And so, against their own fear, they summoned Reyes. She entered the chamber flanked by guards, not as prisoner, but as advisor. Generals sneered, politicians muttered, but none could deny the number projected before them. Survival rates, kill ratios, mission outcomes, all tilted in favor of her cadets. A grizzled alien war hero, one whose campaigns have been studied for generations, finally spoke. His voice rumbled like thunder across the hall. You train cadets to fight like predators, not soldiers. Why? Reyes met his gaze without flinching. Because predators survive. Soldiers die following orders written by dead men. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Some called it blasphemy. Others, truth. The war hero leaned forward. And if we unleash this on our fleets, what then? Her answer was simple. Then your fleets will live. The chamber fell silent. They gave her command, not of ships, but of doctrine. A test fleet, composed of scattered units, each carrying cadets touched by her training. If she failed, they would bury her. If she succeeded, they would have no choice but to accept. The enemy came swift. Raiders turned war bands, striking with merciless unpredictability. Council fleets faltered, but her units did not. They bent without breaking, retreated without panic, struck back from angles enemies couldn't predict. Entire battle reports read like paradox. Unit fragmented, yet cohesion increased. Casualties projected 70%. Actual, 12%. Admirals who had mocked her methods watched entire sectors stabilize under her cadets. Survivors returned whispering the same words. We lived because of her. The council couldn't contain it anymore. They tried to brand it adaptive tactics. Soldiers laughed at the name. They called it what it was, Deathworld training. Reyes herself changed little. She still wore no insignia beyond what was forced on her, still trained in dirt and smoke rather than polished halls. But everywhere she went, cadets followed. They didn't salute. They didn't chant. They simply moved as one, instinct guiding them. She had become something doctrine could not touch. A symbol. The alien war hero who once questioned her returned months later, seeking her out not in council chambers, but on training grounds. He watched silently as cadets crawled through mud, fought blindfolded, endured drills that broke bodies but sharpened souls. When the session ended, he approached. His scars glowed under artificial sun, his voice rough. In my campaigns, I taught soldiers to die with honor. You teach them to live without it. Why should history remember you? Reyes met his gaze, eyes steady. Because the dead don't write history. Survivors do. The war hero stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he saluted. Not the formal gesture of his kind, but the simple tilt of hand she had taught her cadets. A gesture of survival. From that day, no one dared dismiss her. The fleets adapted. Not fully, not yet, but pockets of Deathworld instinct spread like fire through dry fields. Entire battle doctrines began to shift. Chaos was no longer enemy. Chaos became weapon. And at the center of it stood one human girl, once dismissed as anomaly, now whispered across stars as something else entirely. Not cadet, not instructor, not even commander. A survivor who had forced the galaxy to learn the one truth Earth had always known. Survival isn't taught. It's earned.